Here.
Councilmember Warner. Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Here.
Mayor Moore.
Here.
At last week's meeting, 2 weeks ago, the work session, there were some questions brought up as to, how the city council, and the manager's office were going to address and respond to, inquiries made by the general public. What we've decided to do, was that at the beginning of each work session, the manager would report back out on those issues that were previously brought up the week before or 2 weeks before, at the work session. So we felt that that was probably the best way for us to avert going back to Pam's big list, for those of you who remember it. And we can just start on another list at this point. But some of the issues that were brought up, I'm just going to address, just briefly. Someone brought up the issue around special events, and adding residents to the special events committee. One of the things that we would ask to do is, we've had some discussion about this. I would ask people interested in being part of the special events committee to fill out the basic application for boards and commissions and committees, and submit that to the clerk's office. We'd be more than happy to look at that, and make appointments to the special events committee.
The only thing you might want to clarify with that, Tony, is that the special events committee meets during the day.
Yeah.
If you have a full-time gig, that's probably not your committee. That's it.
Mercantile licenses. There were some questions regarding, the fees for mercantile licenses and, who actually needed, what businesses actually needed to have mercantile licenses. We're back to revisiting the ordinance and, looking at, not only, the fee structure, but also those businesses that are going to need mercantile licenses. So we are in the process of restructuring. If we do have any questions about mercantiles, I would ask at this point, to either reach out to myself, Tom is involved in it, Tom Gilmore's involved in it, or Denise Brown at this point. But we are trying to work with this as quickly as we possibly can, to get everything resolved. At the last work session, a presentation was made by our Director of Property Improvements regarding certificate of occupancies and proposed changes to the ordinance. We had quite a bit of feedback regarding the changes. We're looking at the current ordinance, and we're looking at some proposed changes. I do know that the Director of Property Improvement has had at least one meeting with property owners. For those of you who do still have questions about that, we will be meeting to discuss it more with individuals. So please, either myself or Rob McEwen, if you have any questions about that. But we will be putting something together where we'll be meeting with landlords regarding it. The parking garage sign. They've been ordered by Public Maintenance. We have several signs for the business district that are going to be ordered, as well as a sandwich, a sidewalk sandwich board for the front of the parking garage. So hopefully we'll have that in place soon. The parking lot on the west side of City Hall, that became a topic of conversation, as well as the metering of the City Hall parking lot. Just in general, I just want to share is that we all know is that parking in Asbury Park has become a significant topic. And we're looking at all areas, including the west side parking lot, and we are referring everything. So we're hoping that we're going to be able to address as many of the concerns as possible. That notorious library light post, that came up again. I've had some discussion with some of the department heads who were involved with that, including Bob Stewart. We are trying to track down at this point a police report. We are trying to track down whether anything had been reported to the insurance company. We have estimates for replacing the lamp posts. All right, one of the best things that we're looking at right now and doing is the possibility of getting 2 lampposts. All right, replacing, all right, both of them on the front of the library. All right, the one that is still there, moving that to a strategic location. All right, we're considering at this point possibly, all right, the side entrance of the library. All right, but we are looking at it. All right, I'm working closely with Bob Stewart about this at this point. And then all right, the repairs to the Sunset Park digital sign. All right, rather than me tell you what I have about it, all right, and then go into Tom, when Tom does his presentation about special events, I'm going to ask him just to give us the update on the sign, all right, because I believe that we have found what the problem is on that. All right. That's all I have with that. Special event, wedding applications, Tom.
Good evening. We actually only have one special events application on the agenda tonight, and that is the Asbury Park Black History Extravaganza to take place at Paramount Theater. This is a request for the use of a city date to use the facility. The way a city date works is that the city has, I believe, 26 free dates where they can use the Paramount Theater or Convention Hall, and we are allowed to give those dates to, we normally require that they be a nonprofit, but we're allowed to give those dates to applicants. However, the applicant must go to Madison Marquette and make sure that they can fit into their schedule. And the free date only applies to the rent on the theater. The maintenance charge also, sometimes management charge. So they must be willing to pay Madison Marquette for those services to use the facility. And we request that the applicant actually go to Madison Marquette first and get that approval before they come here. The Board of Ed was aware of that. The Special Events Committee did review this application, and the Board of Ed has gone to Madison Marquette right now, but they are not totally finished negotiating that right now. So if you do approve this, I would approve it contingent on the fact that they come to an agreement with Madison Marquette. And we don't have a fee for the use of a free date.
Yeah, I saw that, thank you.
There are no wedding applications on this agenda. We did list the Jazz Festival on the agenda. It is our intention to go out for an RFP, find an operating company to come in and operate the Jazz Festival.
Okay.
I have a question for the attorney about the RFP. Since the city is not putting out any funding for this, do we need to have I would say, a full RFP for that?
I'll have to review all the particulars about the event with you, and then we can determine whether it's appropriate for an RFP to be issued.
Because last time we went out for an RFP for this type of thing, we really just, put a very brief, I'll show you the legal notice that we had. Just trying to say it, yeah, about the sign. The sign has been a major nightmare, which I'm going to blame on Verizon. I have dealt with Verizon probably at least an hour every day since the sign has been down. If you've ever dealt with Verizon, I hope you understand what I've been going through. I guess about Friday, it was determined that the service that we had signed up for had been changed. We were on what they call a static IP service, where you have one number that when you go to change the sign, you dial into that one number and you're connected to the sign. When they installed the modem, they put in what they call their dynamic service, which the IP number changes every so often. As you know, the sign got up in early December, and about a week later it dropped. And why it dropped is because the IP number changed. But we had no idea that they had changed the service. Today, I ordered them to install the static service, which we originally had, because the software that we had, that we purchased with the sign, cannot be hooked up to this dynamic service. So that's where we are. They told me that we would have dynamic service in 24 hours, and that's where we're at right now.
Questions? All right, thank you, Tom.
I'm sorry about that. It's just, I wanted to.
Do you have a time frame or no?
Well, if the static service gets up, they give me an IP number, and then I should be able to just dial right in. So I can load that IP number into the software that we have.
So a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Well, I'm hoping if we get this new service, or the old service that we had tomorrow, then we can have the sign up.
Okay,
But what I'll do is I'll report to whether we did get the service or not.
okay.
All right, thank you. Next on your agenda is Don Samet, our Director of Planning and Development, who's going to give a short presentation on the proposed microbrewery at 1001 Main Street.
Mayor and council, as I've expressed in the past, I have a conflict of interest with regard to this matter, so I'm going to be stepping out while you consider it.
And I'm also going to ask Mr. Kevin Kennedy, who's attorney for the applicant. He's just here if there are any questions, but I'll be doing most of the speaking. By way of background, this is discussion of a proposed amendment to the Main Street redevelopment plan. I think it was at your last meeting I had brought an amendment to the downtown redevelopment plan for you, and at that point, and for that amendment, you referred it to the planning board. This is one which the planning board has already reviewed, and they've provided their comments and recommendations back to you. The original referral from the governing body took place in November of last year, so I want to just bring you up to speed and give you some background. The amendment is, or the proposed amendment is to the Main Street redevelopment plan, and it deals with the potential to add or allow for a microbrewery at 1001 Main Street, also known as 801 to 803 2nd Avenue. We consider microbreweries a light industrial type of use because they are manufacturing a product. The Main Street redevelopment plan does permit light industrial use, but it permits it in properties that do not have frontage on Main Street. The subject property has frontage both on 2nd Avenue but also on Main. The reason why staff felt it was worthy of consideration to amend the plan to allow for a light industrial use along Main Street itself, where it's not permitted, is that for this particular business location, the light manufacturing operation itself would not have any Main Street frontage, and the Main Street frontage would be occupied by the bar, tasting room, and a retail area. So it was meeting the intent of the Main Street plan, which was to have Main Street lined with retail operation restaurants, at least in this portion of Main. Again, retail sales are encouraged and permitted along Main Street, so that aspect of the operation being located along Main, we felt it made for a good fit. The council did refer that to the planning board for its review and comment. They did review, or they did adopt a resolution with their report, and they're recommending the amendment as was originally drafted and forwarded by the mayor and council to them, which is a site-specific amendment allowing for a microbrewery at this specific location. Provided for you in your materials are the planning board's resolution, mayor and council's original resolution, and my reports. I agree with the planning board. I think this is a good idea. We're looking at the idea of microbreweries and craft distilleries as potentially being a worthy addition to our commercial base throughout the city. And we're taking a more comprehensive view of that, And as we step into all of that, we're thinking that the microbrewery at this particular location is a good idea. So I would recommend to you, as the planning board is, that you do amend the Main Street plan to allow for this use at this location. There is an ordinance drafted up for you. It is included in your regular session packet, and I recommend you introduce it and hold a public hearing to amend the plan.
Any questions for Don?
I have no problem with the plan. I like the plan, I endorse the plan, but it's same question I ask you every meeting.
Yep, working on it.
Bad answer. I know. But whenever somebody comes before us to amend a plan, it's very costly as far as resolutions, this, that.
Right.
And we're running up a lot of legal bills. The person who's asking for the amendment should be setting up an escrow account to cover those legal bills like we do with all redevelopers. And that's not being done, and we're working on it. But how many more are gonna come before us, and we're gonna keep on working on it? And I know you have a full plate, but it shouldn't be that hard where a fee or a structure is put in place. Again, this is a lengthy process by you, it's a lengthy resolution drawn up by attorneys. This is, thousands of dollars worth of work that taxpayers are picking up for somebody to amend a plan, which I agree with the plan, but why should the taxpayers have to pick up all these legal bills?
Right. Yep, it's on the, believe me, Mr. Mayor, it's on the to-do list. I have not forgotten about you. I put it in my report of tasks that we're all working on.
Thank you, Don.
But believe me, I did not forget about that request, that directive.
Request,
Okay.
thank you.
You bet.
Quicker the better, because there's gonna be a lot of people coming in for amendments.
Yep, always has been, yeah.
Any other questions for Don? Thank you, Don. Thank you.
Good luck.
Next on your agenda is George Seeler, our construction official.
Wait,
All
are
right,
we
he's
not
gonna-
doing the nightclub one?
What's that? No.
That's
that was
one that you pulled?
That was one I pulled.
Everything I read, John, everything I read.
Next on the agenda is George Seeler, our construction official. All right, he's going to make a short presentation on our proposed revisions to the construction fees.
Could I, let me just stop you for 1 second. Because of the snowstorm and we canceled Monday night's meeting, some of the stuff that was originally scheduled has been pulled from tonight's meeting, or else we'd be here to well past midnight. So if you say, well, they just didn't discuss something else that Mr. Sauer was supposed to make a presentation on, that was not earth-shattering. It could wait till the next meeting, just so we can get everybody hopefully in and out at a decent time tonight. So, and we're going to be probably hopscotching around, so you get lost following the agendas, join the crowd. We're going to get lost, so thank you. Thank you, George.
No problem, Mr. Mayor. The fee schedule has been readjusted to adjust our fees so the construction department becomes self-sufficient, but it's also been rewritten in an understandable language. So the average person can pick up the fee schedule and read it and say, 100 amp service costs this much, or a furnace costs this much. So I think we put a lot of time into it to make it so it's fair to the city, but it's also fair to the people of the city. Basically, most of the increase in fees are in paperwork. We do a tremendous amount of paperwork in the office. And people come in, they want a CO Thursday at 2 o'clock, and you have to make it work the best you can. So, but somebody has to pay for the time.
Okay, and I know, so it's a rhetorical question. You've been working on this plan for quite a few months, if not years, as far as getting a new fee structure and making it easier for the Asbury Park.
It's much easier for the average person to understand. I mean, sometimes it's written this and this, and between this and this, and people don't understand KW and all the rigmaroles that go along with that.
And a question I've already asked you, with the slight increase in some of the fees, we're still equal or less than other surrounding communities?
Well, some of the smaller communities were a little higher, but you gotta realize that, like, someplace like Bradley Beach, they have like 3 part-time inspectors. You know, there's nothing that goes into the game. We're compatible, we're a little lower than Neptune, Long Branch, we're way lower than Red Bank, which is 1 square mile the same as we are.
But a much smaller population.
Pardon me?
A much smaller population, Red Bank. Has a much smaller population than Asbury Park. I think it's like 10,000, 9 or 10?
No, it's about 17,000.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And we keep moving people in too. I can say that because Red Bank's my hometown.
Okay.
Okay. I have no questions. Any questions? Now, this will be put on the next
For the 11th.
agenda as a resolution.
We could,
February
we would need to have an ordinance for this, so we can prepare the ordinance and have it ready for introduction at the next council meeting.
Any questions?
George, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Next item on your agenda is our city engineer, Joe Cunha, who's going to make presentations regarding various projects he's working on.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Okay, tonight I'd like to start with the projects as Mr. Nuccio mentioned. We'll go right into Sunset Avenue Footbridge. Okay, so FEMA has formally approved almost $626,000, an additional 10% of which would be covered by the city. And again, that's the maximum. If the city only ends up spending $600, the city picks up 10%, and FEMA picks up the 90%. Currently, we are scheduled to replace the bridge in its entirety, including all the footings and the abutments immediately on the entrance and exit, however you want to orient that bridge. In addition to that, that was the original approval by FEMA. We persisted with them that a large portion of the lake berm was also affected by the flooding due to Sandy. They settled on giving us an additional $53,000, which covers the absolute worst of it. On the extreme east end of the lake, there's a bulkhead that literally floated towards the center of the lake. So that will be covered as well. And we are looking to go to bid. I'm working on the specs now. It's going to be a design-build project. The way a design-build works, it accelerates the actual design. The contractor bears the responsibility on the design and the actual build. So in many cases, it actually reduces liability on the part of the city. And we're looking to have that out to bid by the beginning of March. The contract will probably take approximately 2.5 months and an additional 3 weeks with design. So we're really looking at, three and change, 3.5 months. Complete turnaround from breaking ground, actually from submission of their design, or award of a contract, submission of their design, approval, breaking ground, and completion. Closeout is in addition to that, but at that point you'll have a new bridge. It's going to include new lighting across the bridge to match the period type lighting that we have on there now, probably a little bit more decorative. New railings, new decking, and like I said, a complete new substructure. Originally, FEMA only wanted to give us a certain amount, but we persisted again, proved to them that in order to figure out if the piles were sufficient structurally, we'd have to remove the entire cap. It triggered their 50% rule. If it costs more than 50% to investigate to that point, we get the entire amount, and that's exactly what we did and we're able to get. So this will be out to bid by the beginning of March, and we'll look forward to starting the groundbreaking 3 weeks after that, after design is approved. Contractor design.
Finance, Ricky Gartz is in tune with this number, because I talked to him once, he thought the number was 425.
The 425 number was the original number that was included in the bond. He is aware of the addition due to the, originally there were soft costs. We're saving all those soft costs by me doing it this way. And he has figured out a different way to fund this due to the addition that was approved by FEMA after the fact.
Okay. This has nothing to do about the bridge, but Sunset Lake just triggered a question. Is there any truth to the rumor going around that the flume from Sunset Lake that runs down past Main Street to the high school and goes out to Deal Lake is broken?
There's some truth in that. The actual valve, which I think you're familiar with, right at just across from Dr. Chinichi, a little bit west. I'm going to call it the extreme northwest corner of the lake. It's the outfall structure. There's a valve that allows us, if we open it, to drain it quicker from underneath, but there is the overflow. Right now, we're working with the overflow, so the lake will never go below the volume of the overflow unless it evaporates. So this was looked at when we applied for Wesley Lake, actually when we applied for Deal Lake for the $50 million of federal funds that were made available about a month ago, or actually a month and a half ago. It was deemed that the permitting was going to put us out of the eligibility to get any funding for that. But it is my understanding that there is a new round of funding out right now, and that is something that we're definitely going to look into getting as part of a full Sunset Lake restoration project, which would include dredging, all new bulkheads all the way around, and a better control of the outfall structure, leading us to store more volume, which will help with flooding in the area.
So we're in no danger of Sunset Lake flooding because it will go over the top of the sluice, and we just can't get it out quicker because we can't replace that valve?
We're going to look into it. I know Robert looked at it with one of our guys that knows masonry a little bit better, and also the sewer plant guys are very good with the mechanic stuff, so the actual turning of the gate. But it may be too costly and a little bit too much for us to get involved in. Formerly, the outlet, because it's so small, it would get jammed with a lot of debris and whatnot. We would open it for the heavier storms, but really we always relied on the overflow of the sluice gate.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the Sunset Avenue update. This evening I provided you with the complete memo, of which you may have only received the first page. It's a complete project synopsis on Springwood Park, so that you're all brought up to speed. Council-elect, some of you are new to the forum, and
I only got to 2011. I only got the first page of my packet.
in your packet, correct. So what I handed out tonight is the full 6 pages, which includes a timeline from the inception of the project, which was the first submission of grant funding, all the way through to the very present time. It's followed by a project funding summary, project expenditures to date, and of course, our current project status. For the sake of this presentation, I'm going to fast forward to the current project status, as you can peruse the other facts of the project at your leisure, and always get back to me with any questions and whatnot. But currently, the environmental remediation has been completed. As of today, we received approval, and actually we're submitting a waiver per our MOU to have our environmental consultant do a little bit extra work so that he can submit an application to the DEP for us to apply and receive reimbursement for all of our environmental expenditures to date, which total approximately $43,000. This was not available until just a couple of months ago. There was a long-standing fund that had not been funded for over 5 years from the state with no sign of any new funding. It's called the Hazardous Discharge Remediation Fund, Site Remediation Fund. So we figured for the extra time and a little bit of money, we might as well recoup $43,000 of expenditures to date. So that was definitely good news. At this point, he has prepared a draft report to close this out. I will take that report to the county, who's providing the lion's share of the funding here, grant funding, and they will give me the approval to close this out officially. That will release another $86,000 of reimbursement from the very first grant for acquisition, of which the price was $115,000. So the $86,000 will come back into our coffers, hopefully to additionally fund this project. Overall, the funding is, as of right now, in place, so to speak. The release of the $86,000 and closure of the environmental grant will cause the county to execute the $750,000 in grants that followed. And when I say execute, formally execute. Once I have the formal execution of those documents, I can go to finance and he can tell me, here's your green light, go to bid. Because then he'll know that it's definitely in receipt. So they've been hanging the environmental portion over our head for quite some time, despite the subsequent grant award letters that we've gotten. So just to summarize, since the first grant for $86,000, we have been notified of another
2010.
in 2010.
2010, okay.
So we applied for the $250,000, the first $250,000. I believe it was it was October of 2012. It was my first involvement in this project. We posed a phased approach. So that was for phase 2. Phase 1 was already in hand for $250,000. Upon approval of the phasing, they told us that we would probably max out at 3 subsequent grants. So that pushed us up to, I believe, 2013 was the last $250,000 that we received. Excuse me, approval for. So in total, $836,000 being provided by the county. The city has already fronted $407,000 approximately.
So Joe, can I just cut to the chase?
Surely.
I don't know why it's taken forever to get this park. An entire development has been built, the Vive, in less time than to get a park on Springwood Ave.
Right.
Right? So I will read this. I don't know if the public has it, because if I only had page 1, I'm guessing they don't either. So you throwing out numbers of isn't the most helpful thing to me. But this has been going on since 2009, and I understand that you weren't with the city at that point, but it's now 2015, and there's nothing there. There's nothing there.
Understood.
So
Except for a
I
playground.
don't know what to say to you to make this a priority and to put this at the top of your priority list, but I would put it at the top of your priority list, because you also have CDBG money. I mean, there is a
There is
plethora of
150.
money for this park that we just can't get built, which seems like insanity to me.
Correct.
So you tell me what we need to do to make this a priority and to get this built quickly.
So right now, we are tentatively scheduled for February 12th to be out to bid.
Okay.
The plans are complete, the specs are complete. There's minor tweaks going on while we wait for this final closure, which is holding up the lion's share of the money. CFO has made it clear to me, without that execution of documentation for the grants in hand, he will not allow us to go to bid.
And that execution's.
And that's
coming.
actually by law. He
Okay,
cannot.
but where is that execution?
They need to have the closure of the remediation. They need to know that their environmental remediation is absolutely complete.
And we're getting that.
We have that,
We have
yes.
that
We have a
physically
draft
or-
already.
Okay.
Yes.
So at our second meeting in February, we are going to have,
We will announce that we will be out to bid the following day. So the first meeting in February is the 11th. The next day we'll be out to bid.
okay, so by the second meeting in February, we're going to be out to bid.
Yes.
Okay.
After, 5 years?
5 years.
Yeah. So I do need to make it clear, though, that as part of the phasing plan, they weren't going to give us $750,000 up front in one shot. This had to happen over 3 years just for that portion. Because when we originally applied, we applied for a $2 million park for only a single $250,000 grant, but there was no other plan for the rest of the funding. So that's why in 2012, we said, will you allow us to phase this and break it up into 3 phases and apply each time and compete, because it's a competitive grant. We compete against every other municipality in the county. And essentially, we've won $250,000, which is the max, for 3 years. Plus, we also got the 86 for the acquisition of the property to begin with.
I think it's also important for us to recognize is that, you said upfront money. None of the money is upfront. Everything is a reimbursable grant.
No, but you have CDBG money access to upfront for the last couple, I mean,
Ye-
there is upfront funding that you have
You're
access to.
you're absolutely right, but we've had that in our community initiatives and affordable housing fund that was posted years and years ago, at the time of the WRA agreement, the Waterfront Redevelopment Agreement. So we've been using that. It hasn't been a cash flow issue to date for paying for the consultant for design, for paying for the playground, for paying for the DPW to dig out and prep the site for the playground, for paying for the remediation. All of that has continued and has been paid. The lion's share that we need to know up front, we don't need to have it in hand, is the cost to pay a contractor to build this thing. And that's where we are right now. We're literally at the nexus of this project as we
Okay.
speak.
You better be.
I hear you. I will put this memo online so that everybody can peruse it. This was prepared for hopefully easy reading by everyone to be brought up to speed completely on the process.
Any other questions about the park?
Yeah, just very briefly, and I agree with Amy. It's been too long. I think if the mayor and council was told 5 years ago, or it was a different mayor and council, they would have bonded for it and said, the heck with all this nonsense, just because they wanted done. But this is a Springwood Avenue Park concept plan from about 5 years ago. And this is going to be very much what the park is going to look like.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it has to be because
So what still just blows my mind away, I can never understand it, and I voted no on it, why June 5th of last year, we had to hire an engineering firm to design it for $107,000. And to date, we've only paid them $26,000, so are we going to get the other 81 back?
No, honestly, they've been a little slow with the payment. There was a breakout for the actual design. There was some survey work involved, there was some geotechnical involved, and then there's a large chunk on the back end, which is construction administration. They cannot even drill down on that until we're actually breaking ground and have a contractor for them to actually administer the project with.
Okay, well, I'll be ready for the first
And I actually received,
meeting in February to make sure that.
We're up.
Second meeting.
first to be out
First
the
is
bid.
the 11th, and on the 12th, we're accepting bids, so.
Well, I want to hold my comments.
No, that,
until then.
I didn't say that, actually.
Commission, I want to talk
Go
about.
down.
Will be, yes, that's correct.
And Joe, we talked about this, and that this council, this is a priority for you. For
Absolutely.
Your department.
It's totally-
This is a priority for your department.
Completely understood, top of the list.
Okay.
So, Joe, if you're going to go to bid on February 12th, when do you think we're going to be able to break ground?
So it'll be out for at least 3 weeks. And then we accept bids. The next meeting would have to coincide with that, so if the timing puts us into mid-March, if we award by the second meeting in March, we can possibly break ground within 2 weeks of that. We did that with the boardwalk. It's not ideal because of the amount of time it takes for a contractor to turn around contracts, insurance, us to execute them and distribute. Not only that, the county is the lead on this. They have to sign off on all of this every step of the way.
Before Memorial Day?
Yes, before Memorial Day, yes.
Completion before Memorial Day?
No. Breaking ground before Memorial Day.
What is the estimated
It's a
time for completion?
It's a 4-month estimated time of completion. We're going to limit that in the contract. They have 4 months to get this done.
If I'm not mistaken, in 2009, the plans was drawn up. I was on that committee.
The concepts, yes.
And we had sent bids out, and bids was brought in, and it was, I'm looking at what John had, and it's not the same, just not the same look. What happened?
You're correct. There were 4, at that time, it was all in the conceptual phase. There were 4 concepts drawn up. The committee that you were part of selected 1. This was the final selection.
And there was money allocated for that.
There was, actually, at that time, there was no money allocated. We had applied for the first $250,000. Okay, Tony.
All right, at that time, all right, because I was, involved in that, we did not have money allocated at that point. What we did have, all right, was we just acquired the land, all right, through a settlement agreement. All right, so we were waiting on $86,000 to come back. All right, once the contract, I should say not the engineer,
The environmental-
design engineer.
Yes, the
all right,
conceptual
selected,
design engineer.
And that was Mazer at the time.
Yes.
All right, they put together, all right, 4 concept plans for us that were then presented to the Springwood Avenue Redevelopment, all right, committee. All right, and they picked that one. All right, at that point, we were applying for the second round of grants for the development of the project, and we were awarded $250,000. So there wasn't really money allocated at that time. All right, basically, we were looking at this park, we knew we wanted to do something there, we acquired that land, we felt that right at that parcel, to complement the senior center that was being built at that time, all right, we were looking at doing something in that neighborhood. All right, so we really didn't have the money at that time. It was later when we started to go to some foundations, and we began to go back to the county. All right, the first round, all right, that 250,000, we were told is that you could only have, all right, the maximum you could have was $250 for any one project. What they did for us then, since the county was so committed to the plan, is that they reopened it to us and they allowed us to break it down into phases. And each one of those phases was a separate project. So that way we could continue to go back to the well and get more county money. So at that time, you're right, we had a concept, we had a plan, but we didn't really have that money at that time.
Okay, thank you.
That makes,
Also, the construction estimate has been cut down significantly. I was at Mazer at the time and actually prepared the original estimate. I believe it was 2.2 or 2.3 million. By the time all is said and done now, 5 years later, due to escalation and various issues, we'll be under 1.5. Depending on what you award, there will be alternate bids for your selection. We have a base bid that's estimated to come in at $1,050,000, and then we have alternate bids. You could call them upgrades, quote unquote, if you will, that are allowed in the design, totaling about $375,000 by estimate.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
There were a couple other items, but they're not. I have one more project. Tonight I'm seeking approval to RFP, request proposals for architects specialized in quote-unquote IRMA roof systems for the sewer plant. As you all know, for many years we've had severe leaks at the sewer plant. They're now starting to heavily impact and cause safety issues to our workers as the leaks have migrated through the roof system and through the faults in the roof system directly over our electrical panels. FEMA, we tried to get more funding from them and blame this on Sandy, but we were able to get $20,000 of approved funding, which isn't a lot, but it's at least something, to replace a seal on the roof. That's not going to stop these tremendous leaks that we have. So at this time, I'm seeking approval to go ahead and try to find architects that are specialized in this type of roof. It's a special kind of roof. It's not very common anymore. At the time, it may have been, but now it isn't. It involves inverted membrane drainage. So basically, it allows a certain amount of rainwater to actually enter and permeate between layers of the roof, find its way to the drains, and then go down to the roof drainage system. Ideally, one would think, even a layperson, you want to keep as much water out as possible. I'm sure there was some kind of design scheme or reason for this roof at the time, probably budgeting-wise, because it was a cheaper type of roof. But as we can see in practice, it's now failed, and it's time to change this out for the safety of the plant and our workers. So at this time, the approval would be for me to solicit quotes from architects specializing in this to have it replaced. It was bonded for in 2013 in the amount of $250,000 as part of the sewer plant overall bond due to the Sandy damage, the damage caused by Sandy. I've been instructed by the CFO that anywhere within the total bonding that was prepared in the amount of $3.3 million, the roof, so what I'm getting at is if the roof comes in higher, which I believe it will, $250,000 is not going to complete that roof. We will be okay. We will not have the issue like with Springwood Park where I can't go to bid because one final piece of a puzzle is missing for financing. That's covered on that project. So the sooner we can get an RFP, get an architect started, we could go to bid and get that completed and off the task list.
It is a tragedy waiting to happen. It's been going on too long, and what really upsets me is resolution number 437, adopted 1/29/14, almost a year ago today. Mayor and council voted 5-0 to give you permission to do the same thing, what took a year.
If I may ask this, Mr. Mayor, was it approval for me to design or approval for me to get architects to
It
design?
was approval for you
Because-
to design.
Right.
But, okay, so it took you a year to figure out you couldn't design it?
No, no. Certain other project, I will say this. The flooding through the roof has been occurring for, and this is according to our employees who have been down there, our longest-standing employees.
I understand that, I understand that. I worked for the city for 31 years.
Okay, okay,
I know the building well.
right.
But still, 1/29/14, we voted 5-0 for you to go out to draw up specs to fix a leaking roof. And here we are a year later, still talking about it, and we haven't gone out for specs yet. Let's hope this time it's a lot speedier, and let's hope it gets done.
It will be.
Well, the wall that was knocked down by Sandy, the wall that stopped a lot more damage, when is that going to be fixed? I know you can design that.
I could work on that, absolutely.
Okay, eventually Sandy and the feds are going to say, hey, guys, guess what? Sandy was 4 years ago, and there's going to be no more Sandy money.
Right.
So we have like 5 or 6 big projects out there, and some small projects out there. The wall is probably a $20,000, $25,000 to $30,000 project, but we're going to lose all funding because guess what? The governors aren't going to give it. Another town's going to gobble it up. So we have all these projects out there, including, I don't even know where we stand with the boardwalk, if we've ever been reimbursed. That's a story for a different day.
We have the boardwalk lights.
We have,
I mean, I'm not,
But that's,
anyway.
but that's
sorry.
not Sandy money, that's.
No, I understand.
I mean.
boardwalk lights are just,
Eventually Sandy money's they're gonna say, hey, guys, you know, Asbury Park, we've been asking you for 3 years, give us the documentation so we can give you the money so you can fix things, and we're not fixing anything, and one day we're gonna lose out on that money, and then there's gonna be holy hell to pay.
okay, you're correct. The, as far as the section of wall to replace, that definitely needs to be done, but it's almost like just putting up a facade because we have a breach right to the left of it. The existing wall and gate that's there, that should be addressed. That's a different pot of money from FEMA. That's hazardous
Fine,
mitigation.
but nobody's telling you not to address it. Thank you.
Are you leaving, Joe, or are you staying?
I have a couple more issues real quick. I'll be, okay, so we're proposing a salary ordinance modification for DPW. We had a long-standing position that was street sweeper. The Civil Service Commission has changed it and merged it with truck driver. We have a few men that fit in that category that do both positions, and we'd like to have this become the go-to position when it comes to both responsibilities.
The title of street sweeper is already in our ordinance.
Yeah, I read it,
but
I think it's
Since it
fine.
doesn't exist anymore in civil service, we want to move towards updating our salary ordinance to a motor groom driver.
/ truck, yes, so they operate both, and some minor equipment as well. I believe the final piece that I have here, we may be a little bit early, but we combine this into one resolution. We're naming our recycling coordinator for the year, Yvonne Adams. She's been doing it since the early 2000s. And at the same time, we're getting approval from council to submit our annual recycling tonnage report, which in turn gives us $3 per ton of garbage disposed of back for recycling purposes to further our program. So that's the purpose of that resolution. Dual purpose.
So would our recycling coordinator be keeping track of tonnage? What does that mean?
How much is taken to Marpow, Delissa, whoever, the county, and it's not just recycling, say, glass and bottles, it could be ripping up streets and concrete.
Okay.
That's also tonnage.
That's also, yeah.
It's from A to Z.
They have a weighted
Since we have
value.
single stream recycling, I'm wondering, like, and the year after year, we get word out on that, word out on that, and word out on that. Does our recycling tonnage increase? Am I using the right words?
It has increased slowly for the last, I had data for the last 4 years. It has been creeping up. It's unclear to know, since there hasn't been an accurate or a complete census in the last 4 years, to know whether that's an increase in actual population. But we are increasing. The percentages are increasing slightly as well. But like Mr. Mayor said, it's basically a track on our entire waste stream. And the more, obviously, that we can take out of that and recycle, the less we pay to dump at a landfill. Plus, we get paid for our recycling.
So the
Well-
recycling coordinator doesn't keep track of efforts to increase our recycling?
They
I mean,
can't.
we brought that up a year ago.
They-
That people don't understand the single stream recycling, particularly new residents. And your recycling really should be bigger than your garbage in more cases than not.
In theory, we should, yeah, in a perfect world, we'd be probably 75% recycling, 25% trash. Monmouth County would love, because on the county level, it's in everyone's best interest, both the municipalities in the county, to have every municipality up to a certain percentage of their waste stream going directly to recycling. Ideally, they would like us to be at 50%. There are very few municipalities that are even close to that.
And what are we at?
I would have to look at that, but I would gander to wager somewhere between 10 and 20. 10 and 20. Now, I hear some jeers, but if I gave you an average of the municipalities across the county and across the state, you would see we're not terrible. There's definitely room for improvement, but we're not by far the worst.
Okay.
Joe, is that an education problem? People just aren't aware, or?
That's part of it. So some of our efforts, I've been working with Yvonne to do quarterly bulletins instead of just the calendar. She's done them in the past. She's also done our recycling day in October. I think we've had that 2 years in a row. We're going to try to keep that every year. And there are various other things that we can do. We do have some grants available from recycling of years past that we can apply that money towards it. We're looking into, and actually at one of these subsequent meetings coming up, changing the trash receptacles that we currently have, starting with the CBD and the waterfront west of Kingsley. Not anything that's out there now in the waterfront is going to stay, but they're going to be combination recycling and trash receptacles, very similar, if not identical, to what Belmar did on their Main Street. So that should help significantly, as well as logging all of the larger producers of waste and targeting them to recycle better and more efficiently.
And you and your staff do work closely with the schools as far as education. You go to the schools once a year and put on presentations about how important recycling is. So we are trying to get it to the kids, and the kids did the calendar cover the last 2 years.
That's correct. That was the last 2 years, and we do a contest, and there's a lot of involvement, a lot of fervor amongst the students when we do that annually. So we're going to keep that going as well.
If everybody would recycle, we could lower taxes.
Yes, we could.
Because it's our biggest cost, tipping fees.
Yes, we could.
Any other questions for Mr.
No, the only thing I was going to say is you and Robert did a great job getting the DPW guys out with the snowstorm. Kudos to you both. I saw plows throughout the storm, and it's greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Thank you.
I agree, thank you.
Your last presentation is by Deputy Chief Anthony Salerno regarding a 10-minute loading zone outside of 1700 West.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. Here tonight to propose a 10-minute loading zone from 1700 West.
You said you were going to take 10 minutes. I'm like, no, you're not. Okay, go ahead.
Oh.
My fault, Tony. Go ahead.
So why don't you look? The loading zone was proposed first by the Condominium Association. It turned it over to our traffic unit. Also, you already did a study, check it out. it appears to be something that would help the city as well as the building itself. As you know, Webb Street's a very narrow street. There's a lot of folks that are in the condominiums that are there at 1700 Webb. This would ensure that traffic flow continued even when there was loading and unloading there, and would make not only traffic but also the ease for the condominium associations in terms of their loading and unloading. So the police department supports that proposal, and we're asking for the council to approve it and take action on that through the adjournment.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll have an ordinance ready for introduction at the next meeting for this matter.
Well, there was 1%, yeah? No, okay.
Keep this close to my agendas.
Okay, items for discussion, I appointments to boards, commissions, and committees.
That's you.
No, that's not me. This is-
Nothing.
Well,
Well,
There have been some applications that have been submitted, and we put this on the agenda in case you wanted to discuss any of them or make any appointments this evening.
oh, I think there's an appointment, but I don't think we have a discussion.
But Yvonne wants to,
well, I can wait until.
I'm sorry.
No, no, no,
I'm
I can
sorry.
wait until it's, all right. There is going to be another committee coming up for code and quality of life issues. We will meet in the evening. And I just want you to know that the committee is open. We are taking applications. You can either apply online. That's a question.
We'll get the applications online.
Online or the city clerk's office. So if you're interested, would you please volunteer? Thank you.
and during the regular session, I will be making an appointment to the Housing Authority. That's it.
Anyone else? Matters to be brought up by the city council?
Okay, Joe's here. I want to echo what Amy said and thank all the people who worked so hard to keep the city running during our, didn't really turn out to be as serious as we thought, but during the recent snowstorm. So thank you for that. And I want to thank Amy and Tom and the committee that worked on the new website. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's really wonderful. It's going to make working with the city so much easier. And I also have a question, and I don't know who to direct it to, but why in the city are some streets have alternate parking and others do not?
That's something we've currently been looking at, all right, in our ordinance, all right, and working on trying to look at those streets that we really are going to need to set up alternate side of the street parking. I think that's, in the old ordinance, some of those streets are looked at as being passable or wide enough to plow, but it's something we have to go look at.
Right.
Joe and I and Robert have been talking about it.
Because it's my understanding that if you aren't an alternate side of the street, you're not automatically cleaned on a regular basis, and that it's when the Department of Public Works gets to you. And I don't think that's fair.
Did Joe leave?
Hmm?
That's, say, you're kind of right, and, it's one thing, like, the citywide calendar, the last 2 years, for some reason, the street sweeper schedule hasn't been put in. And I think that would help everybody, because it does say, like, I'm not on a street that's marked, but every Wednesday, the sweeper goes down my street, and it's on that calendar, so maybe we can get DPW to put that up on the website. But it used to be in the calendar, it used to be on the back page. Here's the sweeper schedule.
Well, the other reason I bring it up is I think it might be easier for the people who live here if they had that information. When I went on the website and said, well, if you're on this street, you park your car on the north side.
I
and
know,
if
a
you're
lot
on
of
this
people were
street,
confused.
you park your car on the east side. And we have a number of people in the city who, number one, English is the second language. They're not going to be able to get the information from the website. And secondly, and there are a number of people who just don't have access to social media. And we need to be able to give them information in a timely manner. So that's,
I think this issue, you make a good point. The issue did come up in emergency management the last 2 days, and one of the things that, we were looking at is that moving away from the north side, south side, to talk about the odd, numbered houses as opposed to the even numbered houses, and, try to work that in some way so people would understand it a little easier.
because I noticed on my street, I was the only car that moved to the north side. All right, and that's it for me. Thank you.
Next, okay. First of all, thank you guys. Thank everyone for coming out, especially after yesterday's snow. I only have a couple things. This might be related to the mayor and Tony. Well, I think it's important that we build a relationship with the superintendent of the schools in Asbury Park. I don't know if you've been in contact with him, but we're going to need to use their buildings at times. And it's just overall, we need to come as one if we can. So if you're able to talk to them, talk to the superintendent and get to know him and let him know a little bit about our city, because he is new, it'll be appreciative. Another thing is, and I labeled this, do we know the laws? If a policeman was to stop you, what would you do? How would you react? Would you be polite, or would you just throw up your hands, or why you stop me? Getting to my point is, I would like to have a meeting. I don't know if I can convince the council to have it on a Monday, or maybe we can get in touch with some of the churches, Tony, and have it once a month. But we need to bring in, and Deputy Slaughter, if we can bring in 2 officers, or either you can be in charge. Bring in 2 officers a month and have it like an open meeting, and we just ask questions to that particular officer. What should I do if a policeman stopped me? Or it might be a lot of things that we don't know about the law that we can get valuable information about. So I'd like for you to think about it, Tony, and Mayor, and Council.
We could look at that a little bit more. I mean, I do know that the police department was involved with coffee with a cop at the Fuller Cafe, and
Yes,
we were doing
coffee
other
with a cop,
things also.
but there's also something else. We're involved with the clergy in town, and we've had a meeting with all the pastors. And there's an old program called You and the Police, where they used to teach, and it was going back for generations. We're working on putting together that program to get that back out to what you do when you're stopped with a police officer, what your rights are, and how to deal with it. So you're exactly right.
I don't think you understand what I'm saying. I would like to just, like an open area, just like we're doing here. And just, if you was to come up here, everyone would just raise their hand and ask you a question.
That's great.
But as far as paperwork and stuff like that, it's not going to get out there. And we need to get in all 4 corners of Asbury Park, because there's a lot of people that don't know the law, and I'm one of them. And a lot of things my son say to me, I don't understand. And probably a lot of questions you have in mind about what to do if you get stopped.
That's exactly what they're talking about. No paperwork, get together, have the folks come in and interact with the police on that subject. And I'll talk to you about it later. We'll talk about how we're going to do it. Anything you'd like to get involved with, that's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah, I just have a couple of things. Also, I'm piggybacking on a little of what Yvonne said. So the website's out, which is, I think, one of our first steps in trying to better communicate with the residents in the city. The snowstorm, I think, was a great first step in it. And I think Yvonne makes a great point in that we were able to get the message on Facebook, Twitter, the website. We use Nextdoor and we use Nixle, and we use the reverse 911. So I think we made great strides in hitting all of those avenues in terms of the storm. But there's obviously portions of the city that don't have access to the internet. And as somebody who considers communication a hobby and has you know, I think this is the most supportive council on getting better communications out. I would welcome any ideas on how to do it in a way that will reach people who may not have access to the internet. I want to thank DPW, Joe already left, for not only being in the OEM meetings, but regularly communicating to either me or Tom to get the message out about what was going on the ground, and for all the DPW guys who were out working and plowing the streets. That's it.
Basically, the same thing. I'd like to, I don't even know what today is. Today's Wednesday. So Monday at 10 o'clock, we had an OEM meeting. OEM coordinator, Garrett Garberson, called it. It was well attended. We included the school system.
Right.
The superintendent was there. We included the housing authority. We included the Chamber of Commerce. We reached out to everybody because we are all in this boat together. I think it was a great meeting. I think we were very prepared. Thank goodness we didn't get what they forecast, but it was still a good trial, and let's hope we don't have to go through it anymore this year. Amy, Tom, everybody, the information, right, instead of like during Sandy, people were like, where do we go? What do we do? We have no power. Nobody's telling us anything. I think this time we were spot on as far as communication, and I cannot thank, again, Tom, Amy, everybody for being on top of that. Chief Keddy's Deputy Director, OEM, excellent job. Police, fire, DPW, again, just an excellent job. Were there a couple of little mistakes? Absolutely. You know, in a storm this size with like a lot of people don't have garages or driveways, there's always going to be problems. But overall, I think it went fairly well. Were our streets a little bit icy this morning? Yeah, and when I went to the doctors in Ocean Township, so were their side streets. So the major streets were clear, but the side streets were icy, and as long as that sun comes out, sun and salt will melt anything. So again, excellent job, and can't thank everybody else enough. Let's just hope we don't have to do it again this year. That's all I have. Tony?
Thank you. I have just two short matters. All right, number one, due to the snowstorm yesterday, the public hearing on the Sunset Avenue Bridge was canceled. It's been rescheduled for tomorrow from 3 to 5 p.m. In the council chambers here, and again at 7 to 9 in Ocean Township. So if anybody has any questions, concerns or comments, you can basically share them at the public hearing. Again, 3 to 5 here, 7 to 9 Ocean Township. Secondly, I would just like to acknowledge Madison Marquette. They donated 2 30-foot blue spruce trees to the city. The trees that they had down the beachfront, one at Asbury Avenue, one at Convention Hall. I also want to acknowledge and thank Burke Construction, who donated both manpower and equipment to move those 2 trees to their new homes. One of those trees was placed at Fireman's Park. The second one was placed at the Springwood Avenue Park at the corner of Springwood and Atkins. So, Carrie, thank you very much. If there's anybody from Burke here, thank you. Greatly appreciate it. That's all I have.
Yes, I'd just like to let the public know that the council may be taking formal action this evening on 3 matters that were addressed during our executive session. All of them are already listed on the regular session agenda for this evening. They're all litigation matters and settlement of those litigation matters. And they were all involving the New Jersey Intergovernmental Insurance Fund, and Eric Nemeth, General Counsel to the fund, came to the executive session earlier this evening and addressed those matters with the council. The first is Soehago versus City of Asbury Park. That's a workers' compensation claim. And the next 2 are JCP&L versus City of Asbury Park and Verizon versus City of Asbury Park, both of which are general liability claims involving property damage. The last thing I just wanted to indicate is that the first individual resolution on the regular agenda, which is number 2015-53, is being removed from tonight's agenda and will potentially be reconsidered at a future council meeting, and that deals with the appointment of the acting city clerk. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Let's take, when I say 5 minutes, 5 minutes, and at 8 o'clock, we're going to start because we're running about an hour late, and apologize again, but trying to get more information to everybody. So We're going to take a 5-minute break. 8 o'clock, we're going to start. So Quinn, don't disappear. Yeah, that's what I'm going to